Here we are today on the 6th of May. It's week 7 or 8 of lockdown. I've lost count. I've stopped counting because it's all become very repetitious. And that's not to say I'm bored of it, because there's still an enormous amount of kind of anxiety in the air, which doesn't really allow one to become bored. But it is very repetitious, and I kind of woke up with that in my mind and, thinking, am I repeating myself? There's a lot of the same information and advice out there for people. And actually, in the last few weeks, not a lot has changed. And so a lot of the same things still matter in the same way. And I kind of thought about what happens to me when I'm in a repetitive situation, is that I tend to check out. One of my coping mechanisms with repetition and boredom with the minutiae is to just check out. And if something continues for a long period of time, I can become quite numb and a bit disconnected from myself, and I stop kind of communicating particularly effectively, either asking for help or asking others how they are, or so just a bit disconnected from myself and other people. And if you layer on top of that challenge or unpleasantness around the repetition, so tasks that I find emotionally difficult or mentally difficult or physically difficult, things that I find boring and challenging, and I'm forced to repeat those, how quickly frustration can lead to feeling real anxiety, and it can really bring around a low mood. So one of the things that I was thinking about was making sure that I am able to sustain myself after with luck some of the restrictions are lifted. And how tempting it's going to be to just rush back to old habits and things that I've reminded myself I don't want or need to do anymore. And the likelihood is that if I don't remain conscious of myself and careful, that I can return to some of that. And, I guess it's true in all our habits and patterns of behaviour. I think especially the burden on leaders to find a whole new way of working with people, how to establish, maintain and support relationships in a completely different way, how to involve people in different ways, in a meaningful way, will probably really have stretched us, and we will have discovered all sorts of new things about what it means to have different ways of working. We'll have found out all sorts about each other's lives and how important those lessons are. And I think what a fantastic opportunity to really deepen relationships, really understand engaging and connecting and involving people in a new way, in a more conscious way, in a less kind of processy because somebody asked me to do it way, but to discover for ourselves how we need to connect in order to lead effectively. And what a terrible shame it would be if we return back to normal and let a lot of that go. And it's like when you go to a training course and you're there and you're thinking yes, but as soon as you're back at your desk, so much of it's already out of your mind. And even if you have a really strong will to try and implement some of the practice, you'll maybe implement just a little bit of it, and all the time you carve out in your diary to kind of try and focus on that, you'll lose because something will come along, and before you know it, 2 months has passed and it's kind of gone. And I was thinking about how important and how valuable it's going to be to try and hold on to that, not least because some of the people in our teams who will have checked out or needed to find a way to kind of numb ourselves or remove ourselves from the situation because of painful feelings and real personal challenges, after the crisis is over, some of that stuff will surface, and people will really need us to be there in the way that we've been trying to be there for each other this whole time. On a simple level, I like to try and keep it simple for myself. On a simple level, I've learnt that in my personal life. The value and the pleasure of much more human connection on a much more regular basis with family and friends. And what a shame it took this for me to kind of figure out that we have plenty to say to each other even if we talk every day. And I think the same thing applies at work. I'm not going to let that go now, that I really, really treasure that. And of course I have long established relationships with family and friends, and it's easier to hold on to that. More difficult in the work environment to maintain that focus on relationship and well-being and connection, but oh so important as we come out of this lockdown to try and keep our focus there, even though there'll be a massive rush to deal with all the business that's been left unattended all this time, and to rush our organisations forward into getting a grip on all the stuff we were doing before the crisis hit. So I think that's my key piece of learning for myself out there, and hopefully for some of you, food for thought as we get to Sunday and we start planning beyond. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well.